A medical statement arrives for your parent. The total charge is more than $1,000. A few days later, an explanation of benefits arrives from the insurance company with a different number. Your parent remembers paying something at the appointment, but the provider's latest statement still shows a balance. At that point, the question is not simply, where should I file these papers? The real question is, what actually happened to this charge? And is anything still unresolved? That is what we are going to work through. If you are helping a parent or another loved one with medical bills, the goal is not to become an insurance expert or decide whether a claim was handled correctly. The goal is to make the financial trail visible enough that you can tell what was charged, what the health plan processed, what your parent already paid, what the provider says is still due, and what question needs to be asked next. Let's start with a document that causes a lot of confusion: the explanation of benefits, often called an EOB. An EOB comes from the health plan. It explains how a claim was processed. It may show the provider's charge, an allowed amount, what the health plan paid, and the amount listed as the patient's responsibility. But an EOB is not a bill. That distinction matters because someone can look at an EOB, see an amount beside patient responsibility, and assume they need to send that amount to the insurance company. That is not what the EOB is asking them to do. The provider's bill is different. That is the statement requesting payment from the doctor, hospital, laboratory, or other provider. Then there is a third piece of the picture: what your parent has already paid. Maybe there was a copayment at the appointment. Maybe a payment was made online. Maybe a check was mailed after an earlier statement. The EOB may not reflect that payment history. So when you are trying to understand what remains due, you need to look at all three parts: what the insurer says happened, what the provider is billing, and what your parent has already paid. Now we can move to the next problem. Medical billing documents do not always arrive together. Suppose your parent had an outpatient procedure on March 18th. The hospital sends one bill. An anesthesia group sends another. A laboratory charge appears later. The health plan may issue separate EOBs for different services. If you organize only by the order the mail arrives, documents from the same healthcare event can easily become separated. A better question is, what happened on March 18th? Start by matching records to the event. Look for the patient's name, provider or facility, date of service, type of service, and claim or account number when one is available. You may discover that what first looked like 4 unrelated pieces of mail actually belongs to one visit. That does not mean every charge should match exactly. Different providers may legitimately bill for different parts of the same visit. The purpose of matching is simply to understand which records belong to which service before you start comparing the numbers. Once the records are connected, the numbers become easier to read. Here is a simple hypothetical example. The provider charged $1,200. The EOB shows an allowed amount of $825. The health plan paid $600. The EOB lists $225 as patient responsibility. Those numbers do not all mean the same thing. The original charge is what the provider billed. The allowed amount is the amount recognized under the health plan's rules for that service. The health plan payment is what the insurer paid. The patient responsibility is the amount the EOB says may be the patient's share after the claim was processed. The important lesson is this: charged does not automatically mean owed. And do not start subtracting columns or creating your own insurance calculation if the EOB is unclear. Health plans use different layouts and terminology. Read the labels on the actual document and contact the plan when a term or adjustment needs explanation. If your parent has original Medicare, you may see a Medicare Summary Notice instead of a private insurance EOB. It serves a similar purpose by summarizing services billed to Medicare, what Medicare paid, and the maximum amount the beneficiary may owe. It is also not a bill. This is where tracking becomes useful. You are not trying to recreate the insurance company's accounting system. You are trying to answer one practical question: where does this charge stand right now? For each bill or claim, capture enough information to answer that question. That might include the date of service, provider, claim or account number, original charge, insurance status, allowed amount, insurance payment, patient responsibility, any amount your parent already paid, the provider's current balance, the due date, and the next action. You do not need every field for every situation. The exact information available will vary. What matters is the resulting status. For example, you might be able to say, insurance processed the claim. The provider receives payment. Mom already paid the $40 copayment. The current provider statement shows $185 due. Nothing else is pending. Or the status may be, the provider statement shows $300 due, but the EOB lists $180 as patient responsibility. This item is not ready to close. A bill can sit on the table for 2 weeks and still tell you nothing about what is happening. So instead of thinking only in terms of paid and unpaid, give unresolved items a working status. An item may be waiting for insurance. The EOB may have arrived while the provider bill is still pending. The bill may have arrived and need to be compared with the EOB. A question may have been sent to the provider. A corrected claim may be pending. The parent may have paid, but you are waiting for the payment to appear on the next statement. Or the issue may need outside assistance. The point is to prevent an unresolved question from looking finished simply because someone opened the envelope. A useful closing test is, does anyone still owe my parent an answer, a correction, a payment posting, or another action? If the answer is yes, the item is still open. Eventually, you may find something that does not line up. Suppose the provider's bill says $300 is due, while the related EOB lists $180 as the patient balance. Your role is not to declare the provider wrong or decide how the claim should have been handled. Your role is to identify the discrepancy clearly. A useful question for the provider billing office might be, does this balance reflect the insurance payment shown on the EOB? Or, was the payment my parent made at the appointment posted to this account? Another situation is a provider bill arriving with no EOB at all. In that case, you may need to ask the health plan whether the claim was received and whether it has finished processing. If a claim was denied, record the denial and the reason shown on the notice. Then find out what the official next step is. The provider may need to correct information, or the health plan may have an appeal process. This is where the boundary matters. Tracking the denial is administrative support. Deciding that the insurer must overturn it is not. And before discussing a parent's protected health information with the provider or health plan, remember that being the adult child does not automatically give you unrestricted access. Depending on the situation, the parent's permission, involvement in payment or care, personal representative status, and applicable rules may affect what information can be shared. Some billing questions move beyond simple tracking. An unexpected out-of-network bill may raise questions about federal surprise billing protections. A Medicare question may be better handled through Medicare or the State Health Insurance Assistance Program, known as SHIP, which provides one-on-one Medicare counseling to beneficiaries, families, and caregivers. If a hospital bill is unaffordable, it may be worth asking whether the hospital has a financial assistance policy. Tax-exempt hospitals are required to establish written financial assistance policies, although eligibility and application procedures vary. And if the problem involves coverage interpretation, coding, medical necessity, an appeal, collections, or a legal dispute, the appropriate next step may be the health plan, provider, government program, qualified professional, or consumer assistance resource. You do not have to solve every problem in order to manage it responsibly. Sometimes the most useful thing you can do is identify exactly what is unresolved and put the question in front of the person or organization that is responsible for answering it. For further research, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has consumer guides explaining EOBs, medical bills, billing errors, and federal surprise billing protections. Medicare provides guidance on Medicare Summary Notices. The Department of Health and Human Services explains privacy rules involving family members and friends. SHIP can provide individualized Medicare counseling, and the Internal Revenue Service explains federal financial assistance requirements for tax-exempt hospitals. Links to those resources will be included in the video description. This video provides general educational information. Insurance coverage, billing procedures, privacy rules, appeal rights, financial assistance, and available consumer protections can vary by health plan, program, provider, state, and individual circumstances. For a specific situation, use the applicable official guidance or an appropriately qualified professional. If you have helped a parent sort through medical bills before, think about one thing that made it easier to tell whether a charge was truly finished. Without sharing private medical or account information, what tracking habit or question helped you most? A practical lesson shared respectfully in the comments may give another family a useful question to ask when their own paperwork does not make sense. You can also use the trustworthy resources in the description to check the rules that apply to your parent's situation. The goal is not to turn yourself into the billing department or the insurance company. It is to be able to look at one healthcare charge and say, with reasonable confidence, I can see what happened, I know what is still open, and I know where the next question belongs.